So the Donald Trump clown show continues, and if you've been following the story the last couple of days, Trump has been acting like I'm a big, tough guy. I'm a good business person, and honestly, guys, he's been threatening Europe with 50% tariffs, and he's already caving. Take a look at this.
President von der Leyen, did you discuss the 50% tariffs, and did you agree to release?
She just called me, as you know, and she asked for an extension on the June 1st date. And she said she wants to get down to serious negotiation because I've told you specifically, but I told anybody that would listen, they have to do that. And we had a very nice call, and I agreed to move it. I believe June 9th would be, July 9th would be the date. That was the date she requested. Could we move it from June 1st to July 9th? And I agreed to do that. And that she said we will rapidly get together and see.
So according to Trump, right, he's threatening these 50% tariffs. He's trying to be a tough guy. He takes a phone call from Europe and suddenly he just totally caves, right? You literally just saw what he's talking about. And the crazy thing about this stuff, I understand some people like Trump or whatever, but I just want to show you who he is and what he talks about and sort of why we are where we are today. He's also talking about Europe where he's tweeting out about Putin. This is coming from Trump. He says, I've always had a good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. That's according to Trump. And I feel like when we, see these sort of tweets or whatever nonsense that Trump says on a daily basis, that oftentimes he's talking about himself or freudian slips, etc. Right? Is Trump showing signs of dementia, craziness, etc.? If you see a recent graduation speech at West Point, I think so. So watch. This is crazy stuff.
This was a long time ago, but he was the first of the really, really big home builders. And he became very rich, became a very rich man. And then he decided to sell. He was offered a lot of money by a big conglomerate, Gulf and Western, big conglomerate. They didn't do real estate. They didn't know anything about it, but they saw the money he was making. They wanted to take it to a public company. And they gave him a lot of money, tremendous amount of money, more money than he ever thought he'd get. And he sold his company, and he had nothing to do. He ended up getting a divorce, found a new wife. Could you say a trophy wife? I guess we can say a trophy wife. It didn't work out too well. But that doesn't work out too well, I must tell you. A lot of trophy wives, doesn't work out. But it made him happy for a little while at least. But he found a new wife. He sold his little boat and he got a big yacht. He had one of the biggest yachts anywhere in the world.
So that's the stuff that he's talking about, right? He's just on and on about money, 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 a lot of money. He made a lot of money and he got trophy wives, and that doesn't work out so good, right? That's Trump. And it's laughable, it's sad, it's sickening, it's all these things put together. But frankly, the people who worship Trump, adore Trump, they just are greedy. They want that money just like Trump, right? And Trump pretends he got all this money, etc. And that's what this is representative of. There's a lot of people out there that's their God. Their God is money. And I disagree with that. I have a different philosophy of life. I think there's other things out there to money. I think valuing decent human relationships, mutual, respectful relationships. And it's the same thing that they've been saying in Europe, saying in China is like, hey, Trump, if we're going to do any business with you, we want mutual respect. Like these are just common decency things. But you can see like for the Trump people, it literally is money, money, money. And that particular party is like money, money, money. He got a lot of money, right? That's all they talk about. I want to show you, though, that not every American thinks that way. In fact, this is a contrasting speech, commencement speech over at Princeton by Federal Chair Jerome Powell. Have a listen to some of the stuff he has to say.
Governors, judges. Of course, most of those who serve, though, are not public figures. I could just as well point to classmates who devoted their working lives to teaching high school kids. For me, there's no higher calling, honestly.
And this is a very, very different speech than, say, what Trump is talking about with trophy wives and money. Federal Chair Jerome Powell is actually talking about and inspiring students to go into public service. And even, you saw right there, even talking about how there's no higher calling than, say, becoming a teacher. So, this spoke to me. I just saw this, it just came out a few hours ago. If you guys don't know, I was a professor for about 10 years, and I was happy to do that. I'm still happy to do it today. That's sort of why I focus on education. And with this channel, and not everyone is about money all day, every day. There's more things in life than that. Yes, money is important to put food on the table, but going after trophy wives and yachts and stuff like that isn't necessarily the route to happiness. And this is sort of why you see Trump the way that he is, or Musk the way he is. Musk with his whatever 14 plus kids and multiple baby mamas, who knows how many. I just want to contrast this because there's too much push into that money, Trumpy Musky direction, and this is sort of where we are, the moral decay and decadence of the USA. Take a look at more of what Federal Chair Jerome Powell has to say about giving advice to young people. It's interesting.
I had brushed off my parents' one academic suggestion, which was to major in economics, which at that time struck me as, if I'm being honest, boring and useless. After 13 years at the Federal Reserve, I fully admit that I was completely wrong about that. After graduation, I had no plan and no job. I wound up putting labels on shelves in a warehouse for 6 months, and I didn't feel great about that. One of my closest friends was getting a master's at Stanford, and I could only think, nice going, Jay. You really nailed that. But in hindsight, that time in the warehouse was a blessing, and it was exactly what I needed. The next fall, I entered law school, and for the first time, I was highly resolved to make the most of the opportunity.
And so it was an interesting story that, Federal Chair Jerome Powell is sharing that he worked in a warehouse, putting labels on stuff. And, the things and the experiences that you do when you're young or throughout your life make up who you are today. If you guys don't know my story, I wrote a book about it. It's called Positive Angle, and talked about many jobs that I worked. I picked berries as a kid with immigrants. I started this when I was 12. I worked in grocery stores. I worked in restaurants, these kind of things. Like I really know what it means to have various hourly jobs, et cetera. And you become more appreciative of where you are as you try to improve yourself every single day. Federal Chair Jerome Powell also talks about lifelong learning, these kind of things. That's sort of why I talk with you guys all the time. Meet new people, learn new languages, read, expose yourself to all sorts of things. And it's in today's world, right? Especially say on YouTube, you can make connections with people from all over the place and learn about pretty much any topic. Like there's no reason in this day and age that you would not know about the world. And it's that's why what's frustrating, this whole Trumper mentality of going backwards and being uneducated, et cetera, which I'll show you in a minute when I talk about the uneducated stuff, because I know these are sensitive topics, but you have to point this stuff out because it shows you, because oftentimes people watch the channel, which, if you don't know, about 50% of Americans watch the channels. Like the people watch 50% are Americans, 50% are not Americans, right? So a lot of people who are not American are curious about what's going on with the U.S. culture. Like how do you even put someone like Trump in office? But again, you have to understand it's largely a focus on money. That's what we're going for. And listen some more here what Trump had to say.
And I've approved a $1 trillion investment, and that will be, again, the largest ever in the history of our country. And we are buying you new airplanes, brand new, beautiful planes, redesigned planes, brand new planes, totally stealth planes. I hope they're stealth. I don't know. That whole stealth thing, I'm sort of wondering. You mean if we shape a wing this way, they don't see it, but the other way they see it? I'm not so sure. That's what they tell me.
It's just intellectually dumb. That's the culture and Trump himself, and it's such a strange thing. But it is a far contrast. And again, not every American is the Trumper. I want to make that really clear. You're basically facing a split, right? I think Trump's approval rating last time I looked was at 42%, so it's under 50. If you look at what Federal Chair Jerome Powell is saying, he actually is a big proponent of education, and was talking about universities being our national asset. Have a listen for yourself.
The combination of luck, the courage to make mistakes, and a little initiative can lead to much success. But know this: the world needs more from you than personal achievements and individual success. I strongly urge you to find time in your careers for public service. Since the founding of this great democracy 250 years ago, generation upon generation have assumed the burden and the honor of moving us closer to the ideal that all are created equal. Now, it's your turn. I ask you to take a minute and realize how the quest for these values has led us to this point in our history. We lead the world in so many ways, including in scientific innovation and economic dynamism. Our great universities are the envy of the world and a crucial national asset.
It's an important time when Powell's talking about this stuff because remember, Trump is basically attacking our universities, attacking Harvard, et cetera. He wants to tear our education department apart. You guys know this stuff already. And I wanted to show you the contrast of just two Americans, and I think they're roughly the same age. I can't remember Powell's age, but Powell's actually not a young guy. Like I said, I think they're roughly about the same age. And again, not every American is a Trumper. I'm clearly not, of course. And I want to have an open discussion about this stuff because for the people who are, say, on the Trump side, they're just all the time, they're just like, Chris, but Trump's just really rich, money, 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 money. And then that's what they focus on. And if you actually listen to what the Republicans are doing, the Republicans are actually going to destroy the MAGA Trumpers. Listen to what they say. This is what their budget is. This is Mike Johnson here.
You don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes a mile of open ocean, and so it took us decades to get into this situation. This is a big step to begin to turn that aircraft carrier. One important point about what he said, it sounds like his biggest objection is the fact that we are extending the debt ceiling. That's a critically important thing to do. We have to do it. We're not going to get any Democrats to assist on that. So to get it through the Senate and make sure we don't crash the U.S. economy and default on our debts for the first time in history, it has to be part of the reconciliation.
So the Republicans are basically math doesn't add up, right? And they're talking about, oh, well, if we don't do this, I mean, everything's going to crash and then the economy's going to go to, crap or whatever. And if you take a look at this stuff, right, if you actually look what they're doing, it ends up being benefits for the wealthy and attacks and removal of services for the poor. That's what it ends up being in the most simplistic ways. If you want to talk about tax cuts, I thought this was a really good chart that the Guardian put out. Hey, look at this. Let's do it so that, say, just for example, the average at the top 0.1% to get, say, $250,000 benefit, and if you're at the bottom, you're going to get $70, right? And all I have to do is just show you the numbers. And it's grossly unfair. It's grossly not sustainable, to be perfectly frank, because the situation or the country that the Republicans want is basically concentrated wealth at the top, very few things that are left for the people at the bottom, and the divide is getting greater and greater. And then Trump creates this culture society where you destroy education so no one can understand anything anyway, right? And then you just make all these bold promises that will never come true. It's deeply frustrating, to be perfectly frank. And I know even people who love Trump, I show them charts, but they won't understand anyway. I know I'm a little bit mean here, but this is part of, like, I'm just showing you guys this what it is, right? And you can take it or leave it. And I just encourage people out there who are in the Trump land just to look at the numbers. Take your time. Please. This is what it's going to cost the government in terms of, because remember, they want to cut a bunch of taxes. So basically, we don't have enough money to fund things. So that's why then they have to cut taxes for the wealthy and then just cut a bunch of Medicaid or whatever for the poor. Cut your services. Cut Department of Education. Cut your FEMA, right? If there's a natural disaster, who needs, any help with that? Good luck, you're on your own. This kind of stuff. Trump's promised you we're going to have all the sales tax, less tariffs, which you're going to pay for, but that's not even going to be enough to tighten the gap, to get more to a balanced budget. But it is what it is. And when you listen to, like, the reasoning of why we're going to have these numbers that don't make sense, we'll have a listen.
What's really important here, too, to point out, Shannon, is that some of the estimates, for example, by the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, are wildly inaccurate. They're assuming an historically low growth rate in the economy. The elements of the big, beautiful bill, the reason we're so excited is because it will be jet fuel to the U.S. economy. This is going to foster a pro-growth economy again, to get job creators and entrepreneurs and risk takers moving again, expanding their businesses, adding more jobs. Wages will go up. We'll have more manufacturing in the U.S. because of all the policies that we put into this legislation. It's
like this guy just talks crazy fast, right? This is Johnson, and basically the concept is, hey, if we give tax cuts to the wealthy, like give tax cuts to Elon Musk, and who's the innovator and the risk taker and the job creator, then you're all going to be awesome, right? Because of Elon Musk, it's, that kind of stuff. That's sort of what he's saying there. And you can watch it again. And what's crazy, if you follow this stuff, which I try to show you guys everything, you'll see that some people fall for it, right? So this was a headline that just came out. How Donald Trump has remade America's political landscape. Basically, you have a couple divides in the country. So This chart, there's a couple charts. One would be education, people with college or advanced degrees by county. So if you go to counties that tend to be more educated, they start to lean more left, right? Or blue, if you want to call it that way. If you go to counties that have, people with less college degrees, so less educated, they're starting to, push to the right. And this is interesting. It says here, not a single college majority county shifted to the right. So this would be if a county in the USA has, the majority of the people there have college degrees, they're not going to vote for Trump. They're not moving in that direction. That's a better way to put it. It also goes which is by income, which is kind of interesting, to where people towards the bottom of the economic scale, right, are moving toward the right, towards Trump. So less educated, less money, and they think, I guess, Trump's going to bring you back all your factory jobs. I guess and it kind of feels like, honestly, the type of people who get scammed by, whatever email scam promise you witches. Suddenly you're a relative related to someone in whatever country, right? You guys know these kind of things. Or the people who get scammed by the person who claims that they're your lover or whatever, long lost, and you just text each other, and then suddenly they have a sick uncle and you have to send them a bunch of money, and then all your money's gone. That's sort of where we are. And Trump's basically the scammer that takes advantage of people. And it's frustrating to see, because have you ever had a friend or family member that falls for that kind of scam? It's like you're trying to like shake some sense into them. But I'll keep showing you some more. Just listen to what Johnson has to say about this stuff.
Senator Rand Paul said the cuts are wimpy and anemic. The math doesn't add up. It will explode the debt. In addition to that political criticism, you've already seen Moody's credit rating
Senator
agency downgrade American credit, and Goldman Sachs says that this bill will not offset the damage from the president's tariffs. Isn't this an economic gamble?
There's a really long pause.
No, it's not an economic gamble. It's a big investment. And look, what this bill is going to do is be jet fuel to the U.S. economy. It's going to foster a pro-growth economy. What do we mean by that?
Tax cuts for the rich, pro-growth economy. That's what they're going for. And these are the tech finance bros that are, licking their chops and looking to get all that money. Here's David Sachs, one of the sort of musky, Trumpy people. Imagine you had a humanoid robot. You could teach it to do anything. When it recharged, it could upload its learnings on an anonymized basis to all the other robots. It could be the most powerful data network effect in history. That's on May 25th, 2025. This person's writing that. And basically, the people that are teaming up with Trump, right, to try to get their policies through, are developing technology to replace you. Humanoid robots, right? As if that's a thing that we all want. Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe some people really want that. This is Elon Musk. He's tweeting out just a few hours ago, oh, yes, guys, we're going to have X money and X chat, right? I'm going to have this unified app to control all of your money, all your information. So awesome. You're going to have robot cars, rockets, and we're all going to Mars. That's what Musk has been talking about these days. We're all going to Mars, guys. And then he's tweeting out stuff about we should be dreaming about the 22nd century. This stuff works on people who, base their sort of views of the world on science fiction movies, right? Oh, I saw the movie Transformers. It was so awesome. And, we're going to have robots just like that. Maybe we're going to turn into cars. Wow, great. And Musk is going to give us that world. We're going to lay on our couch, play video games, and we're all going to be rich. And it doesn't add up. And I know it's not as fun to fantasize about the 22nd century like Elon Musk, but I just want to tell you guys the truth. Listen to people like Jay Powell. Get yourself educated. And if you are in a position to like choose, because a lot of people choose to the more Trump way, because literally Powell said, I had classmates who went for personal gain, personal wealth. That's not necessarily the only way to live your life. You can go into service of others. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you on the next video.